The following is a passage from Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, accompanied by classical guitar. This chapter is called By the River. Siddhartha walked through the forest, was already far from the city, and knew nothing but that one thing, that there was no going back for him, that this life, as he had lived it for many years until now, was over and done away with, and that he had tasted all of it, sucked everything out of it, until he was disgusted with it. Dead was the singing bird he had dreamt of. Dead was the bird in his heart. Deeply he had been entangled in samsara. He had sucked up disgust and death from all sides into his body, like a sponge sucks up water until it is full. And full he was, full of the feeling of being sick of it, full of misery, full of death. There was nothing left in this world which could have attracted him, given him joy, given him comfort. Passionately he wanted to know nothing about himself anymore, to have rest, to be dead. If there was only a lightning bolt to strike him dead, if there was only a tiger to devour him, if there was only a wine, a poison which would numb his senses, bring him to forgetfulness and sleep, and no awakening from that. Was there still any kind of filth he had not soiled himself with, a sin or a foolish act he had not committed, a dreariness of the soul he had not brought upon himself? Was it still at all possible to be alive? Was it possible to breathe in and again, to breathe out, to feel hunger, to eat again, to sleep with a woman again? Was this cycle not exhausted and brought to conclusion for him? Siddhartha reached a large river in the forest, the same river which, over a long time ago, when he had still been a young man, and came from the town of Gautama, a ferryman had conducted him. By this river he stopped. Hesitantly he stood at the bank. Tiredness and hunger had weakened him, and whatever for should he walk on? Wherever to which goal? No, there were no more goals. There was nothing left but the deep, painful yearning to shake off this whole desolate dream, to spit out this stale wine, and to put an end to this miserable and shameful life. A hang bent over the bank of the river, a coconut tree. Siddhartha leaned against its trunk with his shoulder, and embraced the trunk with one arm, looked down into the green water, which ran and ran under him, looked down and found himself to be entirely filled with the wish to let go and to drown in these waters. A frightening emptiness was reflected back at him by the water, answering to the terrible emptiness in his soul. Yes, he had reached the end. There was nothing left for him except to annihilate himself, except to smash his failure into which he had shaped his life, to throw it away before the feet of the mockingly laughing gods. This was the great vomiting he had longed for, death, the smashing to bits of the form he hated. Let him be food for fishes, this dog, Siddhartha, this lunatic, this depraved and rotten body, this weakened and abused soul. Let him be food for fishes and crocodiles. Let him be chopped to bits by the demons. With a distorted face he stared into the water, saw the reflection of his face, and spat at it. In deep tiredness he took his arm away from the trunk of the tree and turned a bit, in order to let himself fall straight down, in order to finally drown. With his eyes closed he slipped towards death. Then, out of remote areas of his soul, out of past times, his now weary life, a sound stirred up. It was a word, a syllable which he, without thinking, with a slurred voice, spoke to himself. The old word which is the beginning and the end of all prayers of Brahmins, the holy Om, which roughly means that what is perfect, or the completion? And in the moment where the sound of Om touched Siddhartha's ear, his dormant spirit suddenly woke up and realized the foolishness of his actions. Siddhartha was deeply shocked. So this was how things were with him. So doomed was he, so much he had lost his way and was forsaken by all knowledge, that he had been able to seek death, that this wish of a child, had been able to grow in him, to find rest by annihilating his body. What agony of all these recent times, all sobering realizations, all desperation had not brought about, and this was brought on by this moment when the Om entered his consciousness, when he became aware of himself in his misery and in his error. Om, he spoke to himself, Om. And again he knew about Brahman, knew about the indestructibility of life, knew about all that is divine, which he has forgotten. But this was only a moment, a flash, by the foot of the coconut tree. Siddhartha collapsed, struck down by tiredness, mumbling Om, placed his head on the root of the tree and fell into a deep sleep. Deep was his sleep, and without dreams. For a long time he had not known such a sleep anymore. When he woke up after many hours, he felt as if 10 years had passed. He heard the water quietly flowing. He did not know where he was and who had brought him here. Opened his eyes and saw with astonishment that there were trees and the sky above him. And he remembered where he was and how he got here. But it took him a long while for this, and the past seemed to him as if it had been covered by a veil, infinitely distant, infinitely far away, infinitely meaningless. He only knew that his previous life, in the first moment when he thought about it, his past life seemed to him like a very old previous incarnation, like an early pre-birth of his present self. That his previous life had been abandoned by him, that, full of disgust and wretchedness, he had even intended to throw his life away, but that by a river, under a coconut tree, he has come to his senses, the holy word Om on his lips. But then he had fallen asleep and now woken up and was looking at the world as a new man. Quietly he spoke the word Om to himself, speaking which he had fallen asleep, and it seemed to him as if his entire long sleep had been nothing but a long meditative recitation of Om, a thinking of Om, a submergence and complete entering into Om, into the nameless, the perfected. What a curious sleep this had been. Never before by sleep had he been thus refreshed, thus renewed, thus rejuvenated. Perhaps he had really died, had drowned, and was reborn in a new body. But no, he knew himself. He knew his hands and his feet. He knew the place where he lay. Knew this self in his chest, this Siddhartha, this eccentric, the weird one. But this Siddhartha was nevertheless transformed, was renewed, was strangely well rested, strangely awake, joyful and curious.